Let me tell you about a Tuesday night. It's maybe 11 p.m. You're lying in bed, phone in your hand, and you're doing that thing. You know the thing. You're opening your banking app, then closing it, then opening it again, like the number is somehow going to be different the second time. Like maybe the universe quietly deposited something while you weren't looking. It didn't. And you sit there staring at your balance, and there's this feeling that's hard to describe. It's not exactly panic. It's more like a low hum of dread, a quiet, persistent anxiety that lives somewhere in your chest and never fully goes away. Here's the part that gets me, though. You have a job. Maybe you even got a raise recently. You are earning money, real money, adult money, and yet somehow, at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, you feel broke. Not just a little stretched, not just, oh, I should probably cut back on eating out. Actually, genuinely, uncomfortably broke. And the worst part? You can't even fully explain where it went. You try to do the mental math. Rent, bills, groceries, the gym membership you keep meaning to cancel, a few nights out, that Amazon order you sort of forgot about, a birthday dinner, and suddenly the paycheck that felt like it would be enough wasn't. And maybe you've been here before, maybe you've been here 100 times, and each time you tell yourself the same thing. Once I'm making more, this will feel easier. Once I get the raise, once I finish paying off this one thing, once I land the better job, once things calm down a bit. But here's what nobody talks about. Here's the thing that's quietly wrecking millions of people's financial lives, and nobody ever names it clearly. For most people, for the vast majority of people, more money doesn't fix the feeling of being broke, because the feeling isn't about the number. And that's what we're getting into today. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why that low hum of financial dread follows you, even when your income goes up. You're going to understand the psychological mechanics of it, the actual brain science, in a way that's going to make a lot of past behavior make sudden, uncomfortable sense. And then we're going to talk about what actually changes things. So if you've ever stared at your bank balance at 11 p.m. and felt that feeling, keep watching. This one's for you. Okay, let's start with a number. In 2023, a survey by PYMNTS and Lending Club found that 61% of Americans were living paycheck to paycheck. 61%. That is not a small number. That is the majority of people in a country with one of the highest average household incomes on the planet. But here's where it gets interesting. When researchers broke that number down by income bracket, they found something that genuinely surprises most people. A substantial portion of people living paycheck to paycheck earn over $100,000 a year. Not $30,000, not $50,000. Six figures. According to the same research, roughly 36% of people earning between $100,000 and $150,000 annually said they were living paycheck to paycheck. Let that land for a second. People making $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 a month, struggling to make it to the next paycheck. So what is happening? If income was the problem, if being broke was purely a math problem, a you just don't earn enough problem, then making more money would solve it. Full stop. End of story. But it doesn't. Not automatically. Not for most people, not without something else changing first. And you can see this pattern everywhere once you know to look for it. Think about professional athletes. The average NFL career lasts about 3.3 years, according to the NFL Players Association. And during that career, many of these players earn millions of dollars. Real, life-changing, generational wealth level money. And yet, according to a Sports Illustrated report that has been widely cited in financial literature, roughly 78% of NFL players face serious financial stress or bankruptcy within 2 years of retirement. 2 years after earning millions. How? Same answer, same problem, just at a different scale. Or think about lottery winners. Studies consistently show that lottery winners' happiness levels return to baseline within about a year of winning, and a notable percentage of big lottery winners end up bankrupt within 5 years. Not because they're stupid, not because they're irresponsible, because of something that happens automatically, invisibly inside the human brain when income or wealth increases. And this same thing is happening to you. Not at lottery winner scale, obviously, but the same mechanism, the same invisible process. It has a name, and we'll get to it. But first, let's talk about why the advice you've probably been given to fix this has almost definitely made it worse. Just make a budget. If you've ever told someone you feel broke, and that's what they said back to you, you know the feeling. The mild irritation of advice that sounds logical but somehow doesn't reach the actual problem. And look, budgets aren't useless. They're not. The math behind budgeting is completely sound. If you spend less than you earn and save the difference, your financial situation improves. That is true. That is real. But here's the problem. Knowing that doesn't help most people. And there's a specific psychological reason why. Behavioral economists call it the intention-action gap. It's the space between knowing what you should do and actually doing it. And for most people, when it comes to money, that gap is enormous. You've probably experienced it personally. You've made a budget, maybe multiple times. You know roughly what you should be spending on food, on entertainment, on subscriptions. You know you should be saving. You know intellectually what a responsible financial month looks like. And then real life happens. A stressful week, a social obligation, a spontaneous decision, a bad day that ends with online shopping you barely remember making. And the budget falls apart, not because you're bad at math, because you're human. Traditional financial advice operates on a fantasy version of human psychology. It assumes that once you understand the correct behavior, you'll perform it consistently, regardless of emotions, social pressure, fatigue, or the thousand tiny environmental factors that influence every decision you make. That's not how people work. That's not how brains work. Here's another classic one. Stop buying coffee every day. This piece of advice, and its cousin, the avocado toast argument, has been repeated so many times it's basically a cultural meme at this point. And yes, if you spend $6 a day on coffee, that's about $2,190 a year. That's real money. But you know what? Telling someone who feels financially stressed and emotionally depleted to give up the one small daily pleasure that gives them a moment of comfort is not really engaging with the actual problem. It's the equivalent of someone drowning and you throwing them a slightly damp towel. The psychological function of that coffee isn't just caffeine. It's a ritual. It's a tiny act of self-care in a day that might feel otherwise overwhelming. Eliminating it without understanding and addressing the emotional function it serves doesn't solve anything. It just adds deprivation to the existing stress. And here's the thing about deprivation. It backfires. Research published in the Journal of Consumer Psychology found that strict budgeting and financial restriction actually increases impulsive spending over time. The psychological pressure of constant restriction creates a kind of rebound effect, similar to what happens with crash diets. Restrict for long enough and the pendulum swings hard the other way. So the traditional approach, track everything, cut everything, budget religiously, works beautifully for a very specific kind of person in a very specific set of circumstances. And it fails often spectacularly for most people in most circumstances. Not because those people are weak, because the advice ignores the psychology. And the psychology is the whole game. Okay, here it is. The thing that explains why smart, employed, earning a real income people still feel broke. It's called lifestyle inflation. And on the surface, it sounds simple. You earn more, you spend more. Obvious, right? We all kind of know this happens. But I don't think most people understand how deep it goes, how automatic it is, how invisible it feels while it's happening. Let me walk you through it. Imagine you're 23, first job out of college, making $38,000 a year. You're renting a small apartment, probably with roommates. You cook most of your meals because eating out feels like a luxury. You own a car that's 5 years older than you'd prefer. You mostly shop at whatever's on sale. You maybe have a Netflix subscription and not much else. And it's tight. But you manage, you figure it out. $38,000 is your normal. Now, fast forward 2 years, you've been promoted or you switched jobs. You're making $55,000, a 45% increase in income. Objectively significant. What happens? You probably move into your own apartment. No more roommates. Reasonable. You deserve your own space. You maybe upgrade your car. Sensible. The old one was getting unreliable. You eat out a few more nights a week. Because you can, and honestly, after long work days, cooking feels like a lot. You add a few more subscriptions. You buy nicer clothes. Because you're more established in your career. Maybe you start going on a real vacation once a year instead of just visiting family. Each of these individual decisions is completely logical, completely defensible. You've earned more, so you're living a little better. That's what money is for, right? But here's what happened to your savings rate. At $38,000, you were maybe saving $150 a month. Not a lot, but something. Because you had to be creative, you were careful. At $55,000, you'd think you'd be saving dramatically more. You have $17,000 more per year coming in. But your monthly savings? Maybe $200. Maybe $250. Your income went up 45%. Your savings went up maybe $30, $40 a month. Everything else was absorbed. Invisibly. Automatically. And then you get another raise to $72,000. And the same thing happens again, just one level higher. The apartment gets a little nicer, the car gets a little newer, the restaurants get a little fancier, the wardrobe gets a little sharper, the trips get a little more ambitious, and you still feel broke. Because your lifestyle has expanded to fill, and often exceed, whatever your income is. This is lifestyle inflation. And the terrifying thing about it is that it never feels like inflation while it's happening. It just feels like living, like a natural, organic, appropriate evolution of your life as your circumstances improve. Nobody sits down and thinks I'm going to consciously inflate my lifestyle so that I never actually build any wealth. It just happens, slowly, invisibly, one reasonable seeming decision at a time. And there's a reason it happens so automatically, a reason written into the fundamental architecture of your brain. Let's talk about what's actually happening in your brain, and I promise this isn't going to be a boring neuroscience lecture. This is going to make things click. The first concept you need to know is called hedonic adaptation. It's one of the most reliably documented phenomena in all of psychology, and it basically explains why human beings are frustratingly bad at staying happy about things. Here's how it works. When something good happens, a raise, a promotion, a new car, a better apartment, you experience a genuine, real boost in positive emotion. You feel happier, more satisfied, things feel better. But that feeling doesn't last. Because your brain is an adaptation machine. Its job, the thing it's absolutely brilliant at, is recalibrating to whatever is now normal. Good things become the baseline very quickly. And once something is baseline, it stops generating happiness. It just exists, neutrally. The new apartment that felt exciting and spacious in month 1 becomes just where you live by month 4. The car that felt amazing and new in week 1 is just your car by month 3. The salary that felt like finally being comfortable becomes the number you need just to keep up. And so you find yourself in a weird position. You objectively have more than you used to, but you don't feel more satisfied. Because the hedonic baseline, what normal feels like, has moved right along with your circumstances. So you need the next thing, the next upgrade, the next level up. Not because you're greedy, but because the brain's reward system is fundamentally built to respond to change, not to continuation. This is where dopamine comes in. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, a chemical messenger in the brain, and its popular reputation as the pleasure chemical is a bit misleading. Dopamine isn't really about pleasure itself. It's about anticipation and pursuit. It's the chemical of wanting. When you're scrolling through a shopping site and you see something you like, dopamine spikes. When you add it to the cart, dopamine spikes. When you get the notification that it's shipped, dopamine spikes. When the package arrives, often, paradoxically, the actual dopamine spike is lower than all the anticipation that preceded it, because the brain is more wired for the chase than the catch. This is why shopping, especially online shopping, is so compelling even when you don't particularly need anything. The browsing itself is pleasurable, the anticipation is pleasurable. And once you've purchased, once the item is yours and the novelty wears off, the brain is already scanning the horizon for the next thing to want. Modern consumer culture has engineered itself perfectly around this loop. Every recommendation algorithm, every you might also like, every limited time sale, every influencer haul video is designed to keep your dopamine system in a constant state of stimulated wanting. Because wanting is profitable, and your spending is the output. Now layer on top of this a third concept, present bias. We talked about this in a different context in the last video, but here it's worth revisiting in terms of lifestyle specifically. Present bias is the tendency to overvalue immediate rewards relative to future rewards. And the degree to which humans do this is genuinely irrational in the technical sense of the word. A famous experiment in behavioral economics offered people a choice: $50 today or $100 in a year. Presented objectively, waiting a year for double the money is a phenomenal return, 100% annually, better than any investment on earth. But a significant portion of people chose the $50 now, not because they're dumb, because the present is vivid and concrete and real, and the future is abstract and uncertain and distant. The brain doesn't feel the future the way it feels the present moment. And this is exactly why saving, especially investing for retirement, is so psychologically difficult. You're being asked to give up something real and immediate and tangible for something far away and abstract. Your brain ranks these very differently. Your brain wants the immediate thing, so what you have is this triangle of forces working against you simultaneously. Hedonic adaptation pushing you to always need more to feel the same. Dopamine driving constant wanting and spending. And present bias making future financial security feel like someone else's problem. And nobody taught you any of this. Nobody sat you down when you started earning real money and said, hey, your brain is going to try to spend everything and it's going to have very good sounding justifications for doing so. Here's how to design around it. You just inherited the standard model. And the standard model is earn more, spend more, feel stressed, repeat. Let me tell you about Daniel. Daniel is 29, works in software sales, makes about $85,000 a year, including commission. By most metrics, this is solidly good money. He grew up in a household where $85,000 would have felt like winning the lottery. And yet, every month is a grind. His rent is $1,800. He lives alone in a one-bedroom in a mid-sized city. When he moved in 3 years ago, it felt like the right step. He'd been sharing a house with 4 roommates, and it was getting old. He deserved his own space, and $1,800 at the time felt manageable. His car payment is $480 a month. He bought it when he got a good commission quarter, and felt flush. It's a nice car, a car that feels appropriate for someone at his level. Leased 36 months. Then there's the stuff that's harder to account for. He eats out a lot, maybe 12, 15 times a month. Between food delivery and restaurants, he's spending around $700, $800 on food in a bad month, on top of groceries. He has Spotify, Netflix, Hulu, a gym membership he uses twice a week, and an Apple subscription bundle. That's maybe $120 a month in subscriptions. He travels a couple of times a year, usually once, somewhere nice, and a few weekend trips. He dresses well because his job requires client meetings. He contributes a little to his 401k, enough to get the employer match, but not much beyond that. At the end of each month, he has maybe $200 to $400 left over, sometimes less, sometimes nothing. If there was a birthday or a car expense or an unexpectedly slow commission month, here's the thing about Daniel that matters. Every single one of these expenses feels justified. There's no obvious villain in his budget. The rent is market rate. The car felt like a reasonable decision at the time. The food spending is high, but he works long hours and cooking every night just isn't realistic. The subscriptions are all things he uses. And yet he's 29, has essentially no savings beyond a 401. He barely thinks about, no emergency fund, and a persistent background noise anxiety about money that never quite goes away. Daniel is not irresponsible. Daniel is the default. He followed the completely natural, socially acceptable, practically invisible path of lifestyle inflation, and ended up in a situation that objectively looks fine from the outside, but feels unstable from the inside. Now let me tell you about someone on a completely different trajectory. Meet Priya. Priya is 31, works in healthcare administration, makes $68,000, $17,000 a year less than Daniel. She has a savings rate of 22%. Every month, she's putting away roughly $1,200 into an emergency fund, a Roth IRA, and a taxable brokerage account she started learning about 2 years ago. She's on track to have a meaningful investment portfolio before she's 40. Does she make sacrifices? Sure. She has a roommate, which she'll honestly tell you can be annoying sometimes. She drives a 6-year-old Honda that she paid off. She cooks most nights, not because she loves cooking, but because she's gamified her meal prep in a way that makes it feel like a project instead of a chore. But here's what's interesting about Priya. She doesn't feel deprived. She takes a trip every year. She budgets for it explicitly. She eats out with friends. She has subscriptions she enjoys. She buys things she wants. The difference between Priya and Daniel isn't income. It's not willpower. It's not that she's smarter or more disciplined. It's that, at some point, she told me it was after reading a book about financial psychology, she made a deliberate decision about her lifestyle level. She looked at what she actually needed to feel comfortable and satisfied, not what she was supposed to want at her age and income level. And she decided to build a life that was genuinely fine at that level. She interrupted the automatic escalation, consciously, deliberately. And the financial gap between her and Daniel, compounding over the next 20 years, will be staggering. These two people, same city, roughly the same world, completely different financial trajectories because of one decision, one mental move. We're going to talk about exactly what that decision is. Okay, here it is, the thing that changes the game. I'm going to call it the income anchor rule. It's simple enough to explain in one sentence. When your income increases, you do not automatically upgrade your lifestyle. You anchor your spending to a previous income level and direct the difference towards savings and investment. That's it. That's the whole thing. I know, it sounds almost aggressively simple, and your brain is probably already generating objections. But I've worked hard for this. But I deserve to enjoy the fruits of my work. But life is short. These are real, legitimate feelings, and I'm not going to tell you they don't matter, because they do. We'll come back to them. But first, let me show you what this rule actually produces. Let's say you're currently making $60,000 a year and living at $60,000, which is most people. Your savings rate is minimal. You're getting by. Then you get a raise. You're now making $72,000, a $12,000 annual increase. The default move, lifestyle inflation, is to absorb some or most of that $12,000 into an improved lifestyle. New apartment, better car, nicer things. This is what feels natural. This is what most people do. The income anchor move, you keep your lifestyle at roughly its current level. Maybe you make 1 or 2 modest upgrades. You're not a monk, and this isn't punishment. But instead of absorbing $10,000 into lifestyle, you redirect $8,000, $10,000 of that raise into savings. Let's say you put $700 a month, $8,400 annually, into a broadly diversified index fund. Over 10 years, assuming an average 7% annual return, that $700 a month grows to approximately $116,000. Over 20 years, roughly $392,000 from one raise. And here's the thing, your lifestyle hasn't meaningfully suffered. You've absorbed the same hedonic adaptation either way. Remember, the upgrade would have become your new normal within a few months regardless. So you've foregone a temporary dopamine hit for a compounding long-term result. That is the trade. And spelled out clearly, it's a very good trade. Now, the income anchor rule doesn't mean you never upgrade your life. It means upgrades are deliberate, not automatic. It means when you earn more, you ask, how much of this actually improves my day-to-day happiness, and how much is just escalation for escalation's sake? Because here's what the research on hedonic adaptation tells us. A small number of meaningful, well-chosen life improvements generate significantly more lasting satisfaction than continuous low-level upgrades across all categories. In other words, choosing one thing that genuinely matters to you and spending well on that, travel, excellent food, a sport or hobby you love, while keeping everything else deliberately modest, produces more actual happiness than diffuse lifestyle inflation across the board. The enemy of financial freedom isn't enjoying your money. It's spending money on things whose enjoyment evaporates within weeks and whose costs remain for months or years. Okay, let's get concrete. How do you actually implement this? Step 1. Figure out where you actually are. Before you change anything, you need to know what's actually happening with your money. Not a vague sense of it, actual numbers. Look at your last 3 months of bank and credit card statements and categorize every expense. Housing, transport, food, subscriptions, clothing, entertainment, miscellaneous. This step is uncomfortable. Most people discover expenses they'd genuinely forgotten about. Subscriptions they don't use, recurring charges they never canceled, spending in categories that's higher than they'd have guessed. Do it anyway. You can't navigate with a broken compass. You don't need an app for this, though apps like YNAB, Mint, or Copilot can help. You can do it in a spreadsheet, in a journal, in notes on your phone. The format doesn't matter. The act of looking matters. Step 2. Identify your lifestyle floor. This is the level of living you actually need to feel okay. Not aspirational. Not what you think you should want. Not what your colleagues or friends or Instagram feed suggests is appropriate for your income. What do you genuinely need to feel comfortable, safe, and like your life has enough good things in it? This requires honest self-reflection, and it's harder than it sounds because we're so thoroughly marinated in external signals about what we should want. Strip those signals away as best you can and ask, if nobody else could see how I lived, what would feel like enough? Step 3. Set up the automation before anything else. Using the pay yourself first principle, set up an automatic transfer to a savings or investment account that happens within 24 hours of every paycheck, even if the number feels small. Start at whatever doesn't cause you anxiety, $50, $100, $200, and commit to increasing it by 1% of your income every 6 months. The automation is crucial because it removes the decision from the realm of willpower. The money moves before you can spend it. The status quo becomes saving, not spending. Open a separate high-yield savings account at a different bank from your checking if you haven't already. The mild friction of it being at a different institution means you're less likely to casually transfer money back when you're tempted. Out of sight, slower to access. Genuinely helpful. Step 4. Apply the 50% raise rule. This is a specific, simple version of the income anchor rule. When you get a raise or any income increase, commit to directing at least 50% of the after-tax increase towards savings or debt, and allow yourself to keep the other 50% for lifestyle improvements. This way, you do get to feel the raise. You do get to live better, but you're also automatically building financial momentum every time your income grows, rather than lifestyle inflating the entire increase away. It feels less restrictive than save everything. It's more effective than saving nothing new, and it builds a powerful long-term habit of treating every income increase as partly yours now, partly a gift to future you. Step 5. Create a conscious spending allowance. One of the reasons people fall off financial plans is that total restriction breeds resentment and eventual rebellion. So within your new structure, explicitly budget a monthly amount, call it your conscious spending fund, that you can spend on whatever you want, with zero guilt, no tracking, no justifying, no budgeting. When it's gone for the month. But while it lasts, it's yours to spend however you want. This does 2 things psychologically. It eliminates the feeling of deprivation, because you have guilt-free money. And it actually tends to make spending more intentional and satisfying because you're aware that it's coming from a finite, conscious pool. Step 6. Do a quarterly lifestyle audit. Every 3 months, look at your spending and ask 2 questions. First, is there anything I'm paying for that I'm not genuinely enjoying or using? Cancel it ruthlessly. Subscriptions, memberships, services you might get around to using, they're just slow money leaks. Second, is there anything I've been holding back on that would genuinely improve my life? Sometimes deliberate spending cuts us off from things that do matter. The audit isn't only about cutting, it's about making sure your money is going toward things you actually value. The goal is spending alignment, a life where your money reflects your actual values and priorities, not just the defaults you drifted into. Step 7. Invest the difference and let it get boring. This is the least exciting part and also the most important part. Once you have automatic savings set up, open an investment account, a Roth IRA if you're in the US and eligible, or a regular brokerage account, and invest in a simple, low-cost index fund. A total market fund or an S&P 500 fund is fine. You don't need to be sophisticated. You don't need to watch the market. Set up automatic monthly contributions, and then, and this is the hard part, ignore it. Don't check it every week. Don't panic when it drops. Don't get euphoric when it spikes. Let it compound quietly in the background while you live your life. The boring part is the magic part. Compound growth is patient, invisible, and relentless. The best thing you can do is get out of its way. I want to slow down here for a minute, because everything we've talked about so far has been practical and mechanical, and all of that matters, but none of it sticks without this. The mindset shift. Here's the belief that most people carry about money, usually without ever consciously articulating it. My lifestyle is a reflection of who I am and what I've achieved. To live at a lower level than I can technically afford is to somehow not fully claim the success I've earned. And to live at the appropriate level for my success, whatever that means, is to feel real. This belief is everywhere. It's in the car you drive and the neighborhood you live in, and the restaurants you go to and the brand on your clothes. It's in every upgrade that felt like arriving somewhere. And I'm not saying it's stupid or shallow. It's deeply human. Social signaling around resources is wired into us at a level way below conscious decision-making. Status is a real thing. Belonging is a real thing. These aren't vanities, they're social needs. But here's the reframe I want to offer you. What if financial security is actually the status symbol that matters? What if the most impressive thing, the thing that actually reflects success in a deep, durable way, is not the visible markers of income, but the invisible reality of freedom? Freedom to leave a job that's making you miserable without financial catastrophe. Freedom to say no to things you don't want to do because you're not financially desperate. Freedom to handle a crisis without borrowing money or going into debt. Freedom to one day stop trading hours for dollars entirely because you built something that generates returns while you sleep. That kind of freedom doesn't announce itself. It doesn't show up in what car you drive. But it changes what your life actually feels like day to day in the most fundamental way. The person who drives the expensive leased car and has $400 in savings is financially fragile. One bad thing, a job loss, a medical issue, a family emergency, and the whole structure wobbles. The person who drives the paid-off older car and has $40,000 in savings and investments is financially resilient. The same bad thing happens and it's a problem, not a catastrophe. Those two people, from the outside, might look like they're on similar trajectories. One might actually look more successful by the conventional signals. But their lived experience of money, the background anxiety, the feeling of security, the sense of whether you're building something or just running in place, is completely different. Here's the question I want you to sit with. Who are you actually trying to impress? And is that approval making you happy? Because here's what nobody tells you. The people you think are watching your lifestyle and judging it are mostly too busy worrying about their own to notice yours. We're all walking around wildly overestimating how much other people are tracking the signals we're trying to send. And even when they do notice, when the car is admired, when the apartment gets the right reaction, when the outfit lands perfectly, the satisfaction is brief, extremely brief. And then you need the next signal. But the satisfaction of actual financial stability, of watching your net worth grow, of having 3 months of expenses saved, of putting money into an investment account every month without stress, that compounds. It doesn't fade the same way. It gets more, not less, with time. I'm not telling you to live like a monk. I'm telling you that the thing you actually want, the feeling you're reaching for when you spend, is available to you through a different path, a path that feels less immediately satisfying but produces the actual thing you're chasing. The thing you want is security. It's peace. It's the absence of that 11 p.m. bank account check with the dread in your chest. And you cannot buy those things. You can only build them. We started tonight or this morning, or whenever you're watching this, with you in that bed, phone in hand, checking the balance. I want to take you back there for a second, because I want you to see that moment differently now. That feeling you have, that low hum of financial dread, isn't evidence that you're failing. It's not proof that you're bad with money. It's not a character flaw or a sign that you're destined to always struggle. It's a signal. A clear, uncomfortable, necessary signal that something in the system you've been running, the default system, the one society handed you, the one that nobody really designed but everyone just kind of inherited, isn't working for you. And signals are good. Signals are information. Signals are the thing that tells you something needs to change before you can get somewhere different. The question isn't whether you're broke because you're irresponsible. The question is whether you've ever been given a real map, not just instructions to spend less and save more, but an actual understanding of why your brain does what it does, and how to design a life that works with your psychology instead of fighting it constantly. You haven't. Most people haven't. That's not a personal failing. It's a gap in the education almost everyone receives. But you've got the map now, or at least the beginning of one, and here's what I want you to know. You don't need to fix everything tonight. You don't need to restructure your entire financial life before you go to sleep. You need to do one thing. Maybe that thing is opening a separate savings account tomorrow. Maybe it's looking at 3 months of spending for the first time and actually seeing where the money went. Maybe it's deciding, genuinely deciding, not just vaguely intending, that the next raise is going to be different. That 50% of it is going somewhere other than lifestyle. One thing, concrete, doable. Because here's the truth about financial change that nobody tells you. It doesn't happen in a big, dramatic moment. It doesn't happen when you finally get the salary that fixes everything. It doesn't happen from watching one video or reading one book or feeling one burst of motivation. It happens in the accumulation of small decisions made consistently over a long time by someone who finally understood the game they were actually playing. You understand the game now. The 11 p.m. bank check doesn't have to be forever. The background hum of financial dread doesn't have to be the soundtrack of your adult life. Those things are not inevitable. They are not just how it is. They're the output of a system that can be changed. And you now know, at least in broad strokes, how to change it. So close the video, get some sleep, and tomorrow, do the one thing. Future you is already grateful.